Okay.
And then if you want to go to Facebook Live, it is the more, or not. Oh, never mind.
We'll just post it.
Okay. Oh.
Boom.
All right, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Can you hear me okay? Give me a big thumbs up. Excellent.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so basically tonight, guys, some of you are probably like not sure what's going on, what this is all about. Some of you are like, yeah, I'm ready to do a sugar detox. And that's really what this is kind of all about, is we're going to give you some information on why it's important to do a sugar detox, and then how to do a sugar detox. And it's something that we're all going to kind of do collectively here at the office. A bunch of us have decided to do this starting next week. And so anybody who wants to join is welcome to join in with us. And so let's talk a little bit about why this is an important thing to do. And basically, I'll just start with saying, you know, in the last 6-7 years of my education and practice here, as far as, you know, how we've gotten to be a really, really unhealthy society is essentially the overconsumption of sugar. I mean, that it really boils down to that. I mean, there's lots of other things that are correlated with poor health, but overconsumption of sugar is a really, really, really problematic thing. And it's just happening nationwide, and it's leading to obesity and cancers and heart disease. You name it. Basically any negative health condition out there can be traced back to likely an overconsumption of sugar. And sugar has become essentially a drug. It is extremely addictive, which we'll talk about, and most people are addicted to it. And so a 21-day sugar detox is essentially a reset to allow your body to lose some of the craving and not be so reliant on the simple high hits of sugar. It literally is like a release of dopamine to your brain, just like any other addiction or drug that causes that release of dopamine to your brain. So we need to wean ourselves off of that, or like doing this, quit cold turkey and just let your body recover from it. So let's talk just briefly on the history of sugar. It originated in Asia. It's had massive influences on our economy and on peoples and everything. I mean, it's a crazy history of sugar, but it used to be, basically, guys, it used to be really, really hard to get access to sugar, and it was a extremely coveted commodity that people craved and sought after. It was extremely high dollar. And only the wealthiest people had it. It was used as medicine at one point. Some doctors used it as medicine once they were able to get easier access to it. But I mean, it was like this miracle drug. And now it's just basically become a extremely heavily produced crop, especially in Brazil now. It's a huge crop down there. And so it's extremely easy to get access to. It's extremely easy to put into foods. It's extremely easy to get people addicted to it. And it's extremely easy to profit off of nowadays. And that's what a lot of food companies do, is they get people addicted to food and then they profit off of it. And so this is a reset on all of that and trying to get you to no longer have to be addicted to sugar. So let's see. So some sugar facts. The U.S. is the largest consumer of sugars. It's no surprise that the U.S. Has a major obesity crisis going on. I think the two go hand in hand. The more sugar you consume, the greater your likelihood of obesity. It's also linked to cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, which are the top 3 killers in this country: heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, and they go hand in hand with sugar consumption. So I mean, it's all correlated together. Kind of some extremely interesting facts. The average American now consumes about 156 pounds of sugar per year, versus in the early 1800s, we were eating 12 pounds per year. So an incredible difference that just the ease of production with sugar has allowed us to be able to eat so much more sugar nowadays. And that's something we need to start being more cognizant about. And we have to bring that number, that 156, much closer to that 12 pounds as much as possible. The World Health Organization recommends no more than 9 teaspoons per day, or which is equivalent to about 38 grams for healthy males, and 6 teaspoons or 25 grams for healthy women. And yet on average, we're eating about 85 to 120 grams per day, which is way too much, obviously, based on what we should be getting. And then I don't know, where you guys are at as far as reading food labels, but if you really start to read food labels, that's a really critical component of, doing this sugar detox is you have to look at labels to identify, hey, is there sugar in this? Can I have this? And when you really start to do that, you're going to be amazed, how many foods have sugar in, which you wouldn't even expect to have sugar in it. And then obviously the quantity of sugar in there. And that's what this next slide is going to show you here. So these are just some common, foods that a lot of people eat on a daily basis. A can of Mountain Dew, guys, a 12-ounce can of Mountain Dew has 46 grams of sugar. So that exceeds the amount of sugar anybody should have in a day, just in that one can of Mountain Dew. That means you can't have any more sugar at all throughout the day if you just have one can of Mountain Dew. But even things like Jack Link's beef jerky, just the original flavor. So it's not a sweetened version. If you look at like the teriyaki versions, those are way higher in sugar. Just a regular plain jerky, you think that's just meat, that's just protein, that's going to be, all protein in there. There's still 4 grams of sugar in there. So peanut butter cups, Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. That one, I knew there was sugar in barbecue sauce, but 16 grams in 2 tablespoons. And when you think about how easy it is to start pouring barbecue sauce on your plate or on your sandwich, like it doesn't take long to get 2 tablespoons. And most people are probably doing 4, 5, 6 tablespoons on their meal oftentimes. The Mott's applesauce, 19 grams, guys. Like that's so crazy to me. And that's something we give our kids as almost like it's a health food. Like we're trying to, they're eating their fruit with applesauce, but there's 19 grams of sugar in that. And there's no skin on that. So you're taking away the fiber in that. And so we're basically just, I read while I was preparing for this, we're literally turning our kids into little drug addicts, and they're all addicted to sugar. And it's clear. I mean, it's amazing. Once you give kids that first taste of sugar, they just have to have it. And that's what leads to, I've got little kids right now. And so I see this all too often when they go to grandma's or the relatives, and they just want to feed them donuts and cookies and spoil them with that kind of stuff. And, I'm all for having fun, but it really, I see the aftermath and the after effects of how much they then crave that sugar, and they need that hit of dopamine. Kids get the same hit of dopamine as adults do. So they start to crave it just like any other addiction. And then the last one there, I thought that was interesting, that double bubble gum, the little twisty ones that you pull apart, 5 grams of sugar in one of those. The flavor lasts like 10 seconds, and then you need another one. I remember playing baseball and I'd eat 5, 6, 10 pieces of that in a single game. So, I mean, just that alone, again, racks up the amount of sugar that you should have in an entire day, just eating a couple pieces of bubble gum. So you really got to be cautious of that. You got to be, cognizant, looking at food labels really, really diligently and identifying how many calories are in a food. And then obviously go back to this slide. And if you're a male, you should only be eating 38 grams a day, and females 25. So you really got to start to pay attention to those things and try to cut out the foods that have a lot of added sugars to them. This is an interesting study that was done in 2007. Some of you have probably already heard this, but sugar is basically just as addictive or more addictive than cocaine on a study done with mice. Mice chose the sugar water over cocaine. And I mean, they work the exact same types of mechanisms with the dopamine release, but the mice in this study chose the sugar over cocaine. So it is an extremely addictive product. And it's not necessarily, that's not a bad thing when it's really difficult to get access to. And that's how, for thousands of years, that was the case, is you didn't have a lot of access to sugar. And now we have such ease of access. And so when you get that rush, that dopamine rush, and that feel good, it's so easy to get it again and again and again and again. Oops. Not sure what happened.
I still hear you.
You can still hear me? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
I lost the PowerPoint there for a second.
No, the PowerPoint was still on my screen.
Oh, was it? You can see
it
again now?
didn't. It didn't. Yeah, I can still see it.
Perfect. All right. So these are some just side effects of having too much sugar. There's behavioral side effects, physical side effects. I find the physical side effects, I knew a lot of those things. That wasn't a surprise to me. You know, obesity, that's pretty well known that too much sugar can cause obesity, tooth decay, even like cancers. Like I knew cancer was something that was linked to too much sugar. Immune deficiencies, guys, is a big one. Inflammation and pain. I know a lot of people who have done this detox of sugar, and all of a sudden they're like, you know, my knees don't hurt anymore, my feet don't hurt, or my back doesn't hurt. And they're like, and then I say, well, it's because you're not eating so much sugar anymore. And it's hard for most people to even fathom that, you know, your diet and sugar can be related to the pain that you're having on a regular basis, but it really, really is, because sugar leads to inflammation and inflammation leads to pain. It's like blowing up a, you know, if take your knee, for example, if you have a balloon and you keep blowing it up bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that stretches out, you're stretching out all your tissues, all your muscles and all your joint capsules, and that leads to pain. So if you can reduce that inflammation, you're going to have a lot less pain. So that's a huge thing that we see early on when somebody detoxes from sugar, is a reduction in inflammation and also then a reduction in just pain in the joints especially. Hormone disruption. So there's a lot of infertility, guys, nowadays. And basically a lot of it can be boiled down to your hormones are disrupted, which leads to infertility. If you have imbalances in your hormones, you end up having a difficult time conceiving children. So infertility can be a big one as well. And then behavioral side effects. So obviously you guys have all kind of heard like hyperactivity. If you eat sugar, you're going to be hyperactive. Kids get hyperactive when they eat too much sugar. And yes, there is some element to that. But again, it's like having a drug. And when you don't have that drug, then you seek it. And that can lead to all kinds of psychological problems as well. So depression, violent behavior I read about this weekend, which again, like, I just find that fascinating. And I know that there's a gigantic, obviously, as we talked about, there's most people, like the average person, consumes way more sugar than they should. And so how much violent behavior and other addictions and learning disabilities and depression are linked to sugar consumption, and how easy is that to reverse? And easy is maybe not the right term, because once you're addicted to sugar, it's not necessarily easy to break any addiction. But it is that simple of a concept, is we have to eat less sugar. We have to have less sugar in our diets, and we could see massive changes in so many different physical ways, behavioral ways. But basically it boils down to, guys, when you're eating too much sugar, it's taking away years from your life. Like, we just know that your odds of dying earlier are going to be quicker, and it's also going to lead to basically less enjoyment for your last years of life. Because if you're in pain, if you're obese, if you're riddled with disease and taking too many medications, it's a deterrent on just being able to enjoy life. All right, so this is a quick little clip I want to show you guys, just to kind of get a sense of really what sugar is, because a lot of people, I think, you know, a lot of people are still stuck in the, you know, fat makes you fat, so I have to avoid fat. And that's really when sugar took off, guys, is when the low fat, no fat diets were introduced, because people thought that fat was the contributor to heart disease. And that's been essentially proven wrong. It's more the sugar problem. And you can look at any graph and see how as the consumption of sugar goes up, so does heart disease, so does cancer, so does diabetes. And so this is kind of the physiology of why that's the case. So let's take a look at this quick.
This is the actor Brenton Thwaites. He's very kindly volunteered his body for the following demonstration.
Can you guys hear and see this okay?
Yep, I can.
Body, it splits into two parts, fructose and glucose, both of which make their way to the liver. Now, once in the liver, the glucose is dealt with efficiently. It's either used immediately for energy, or it's stored for later, like a spare battery. But the fructose half of sugar is very different. The liver doesn't have a system to regulate the fructose because it was so rare in nature. So it hoovers it out of the bloodstream whether it needs it or not. And if all our spare batteries are full, then it rapidly turns it into fat.
Some of that fat is going to stay in the liver, and you're going to have increased risk for insulin resistance and diabetes.
What also happens is that this fat in the liver is then sent out into the bloodstream as triglycerides. which can lead to excess weight, plus blocked arteries and heart disease. Now, when we're eating lots of sugar and other carbohydrates like bread and pasta, we're producing lots of glucose. A hormone called insulin is released, which is like a key that helps to open our cells' doors so they can absorb all the glucose, remove it from the bloodstream, and burn it for energy. The more glucose in the blood, the more insulin is released. But the key point for us is that while this insulin is in the blood dealing with all the glucose, it tells our fat cells to hold on to the fat. It actually turns off our fat-burning processes. So when we're eating lots of sugar, we're putting fat into our bodies via the fatty liver. Plus, because of all the glucose, we maintain the level of insulin, which tells our fat cells to hold on to the fat. We can't burn off fat when insulin is around dealing with all the sugar. This is what may be happening to a huge number of the population. It's highly unlikely with Brenton, though.
So kind of a cool little animation, kind of funny. Let's see if I can get back to my PowerPoint here. All right. Does that make sense, guys? Welcome, Dave. So basically, yeah, like your overconsumption of sugar, your liver can't process that, and it turns it into fat essentially. So it's not necessarily an overconsumption of fat problem. It's usually an overconsumption of sugar problem. Your liver just can't handle that, and so it has to convert it into fat, triglycerides. Triglycerides get stored into your fat cells, and then you end up insulin resistant, and that also leads to fat storage. So this little diagram right here basically summarizes how the blood sugar roller coaster. So most people oftentimes will start their morning off, and breakfast is one where it drives me crazy sometimes when I watch what people eat for breakfast. It's like donuts, muffins, which muffins are just cupcakes without the frosting, French toast. There's everything is carbohydrate. Unless you are eating eggs for breakfast, it's always some form of like starchy, carbohydrate rich, cereal. Most cereals are just chock full of sugars. Even oatmeal, guys, oatmeal is a carbohydrate, which gets broken down into sugar. So if you're just consuming carbohydrates in the morning, your blood sugar levels go up, your insulin levels go up, you start storing fat, and then your blood sugar is going to go down pretty quickly. Like that's usually the case, as your blood sugar drops, and that's why you get that energy crash, and then you need more sugar, and you need to create that dopamine hit again, so you eat more sugar, and then you just keep going in this roller coaster of sugar crash, sugar crash, sugar crash, high insulin levels, store fat, always tired, and it's just a never-ending cycle. So you've got to break that cycle, and that's again what this sugar detox is all about, is eliminating that that spike of glucose all the time and starting to teach your body how to use fat for fuel, and so you can actually burn fat instead of always storing it. So it can be hard, like when you go to look at a food label. So we talked a little bit about like it's really important to read food labels. So number one thing is just go right to how many carbohydrates are in there, and that can be confusing because carbohydrates are a summation of like fibers and sugars and all the different things that add up to total carbohydrates. So look at total numbers of sugar and then look at total numbers of added sugar, and both are important, but really it boils down to how much sugar is in something, and if it's added sugar, it's really a problem. And then if you look at like these food scientists that are trying to get you addicted to sugar are really, really smart. So they don't want you to see sugar as the number one or number two ingredient. So they have to put it in different forms. So there's so many different hidden names of sugars, and you can see that whole gigantic chart. There's like almost 70 different ways that they can label sugar on a food label so that it doesn't look like there's that much sugar in there. So you really have to, like, I'm not saying you have to go and memorize all of these. There's a lot of basic ones. If it ends in ose or malt or obviously sugar or syrup, that's usually a good sign that there's extra sugar added in there. And then you got to avoid those, especially when you're like, so when you're talking like doing a full sugar detox, that's something where you gotta try to keep completely out of all of those things, as well as all artificial sweeteners. So that whole list, that whole side on the far right is a whole bunch of different artificial sweeteners, which we could do a whole presentation just on the effects of artificial sweeteners. But guys, they're not necessarily, they're not better than regular sugar. Like if you need a little bit of sugar, use real sugar. Like don't turn to artificial sweeteners because that can cause even more problems. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? I shouldn't ask that question. Dave's going to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, they're going to be smart questions.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
This isn't the bees and the birds session?
That's later. That's at 9 o'clock. All right, so here's just a little snippet on some artificial sweetener stuff. Basically, it's fake stuff, guys. Your body doesn't recognize it. It reduces that leptin. So if you can see in the high fructose corn syrup, it reduces leptin. Leptin's what tells you you're full. So basically, you just keep eating and eating and eating and eating, and your body never says, well, it's time to stop eating, because leptin tells you when you're full, and if you don't secrete leptin, you're not going to think you're full. So that doesn't work. Aspartame, that's in a lot of things nowadays. Diet sodas, it's in a lot of different diet sodas. Basically, guys, it's a mega high, like your body doesn't even recognize it. It's so sweet. So they just put little tiny amounts in it, but it masks the way your body recognizes real sugar and real sweet things. So if you're consuming a lot of that stuff, then when you eat a piece of actual fruit, the fruit's not going to seem nearly as sweet. And then you have to find that dopamine hit from sugar in a different way, which comes out as, you know, straight sugar, candy bars and sweets and breads and cakes and pastas and those types of things. So there's not a lot of good stuff to say about the artificial sweeteners. So the diet sodas, they're not good. A lot of even health foods. So like if you look at the yogurt on the top left, or like we already talked about the Mott's applesauce, there's a ridiculous amount of sugar in those. So basically it's showing those are equivalent in amounts of sugar in those products. So just because you think, well, there's yogurt, there's still just as much sugar in the yogurt as there is in that donut right there. And the applesauce, basically just as much as the ice cream. Now, the key is there is a little bit of difference as far as like you might get more nutrients. So take an apple, for example. There's a lot of sugar in an apple, but when you eat an apple, it's a whole food complex, meaning there is fiber in there, there's phytonutrients, there's vitamins, there's minerals. And when you consume all that together, we know that it doesn't have the same negative effects on your liver and on your pancreas. So you need to have whole foods in their real form. So if you talk like, you know, a lot of people I know do juicing, like guys, applesauce, or I'm sorry, not applesauce, apple juice, orange juice, those are no better than drinking a pop. You might as well just have the can of pop then, because you're getting a little bit of vitamins and minerals from that, but it's just pure sugar. Apple juice is just sugar, and there's no fiber in there. There's nothing to help slow the absorption of that sugar. It's not a health food. It's not something we should be dousing our kids with. I know people who every day, that's all their kids eat is apple juice. And that's so much sugar for a kid to be consuming. If you want to give them a little apple juice, you can dilute it with water. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of flavoring in your water, but have water and a little bit of apple juice or a little bit of orange juice. And your kids won't know any difference until they go somewhere else. But I mean, it's just the way we got to train our kids. So really this is the reason we do these 21-day sugar detoxes. It starts to become eye-opening as far as like, again, the oatmeal down there looks like it's a health food. It's got just as much sugar as the Pop-Tart in there. Ketchup, a lot of people are surprised by that one. There's a lot of sugar in most ketchups. We talked about the barbecue sauce earlier. There's a ton of sugar in barbecue sauce. Baby food, again, there can be a lot of sugar in there if it's just mashed up fruit in there. Then oftentimes, again, they're eliminating the fiber part of it and they're just putting the sugar component in there. Dried foods are oftentimes, you're eliminating a lot of the good out of it, and it just becomes little sugar bombs. So you got to be careful with some of that stuff. So there are a few ways to help eliminate cravings. A lot of people are like, well, I have to have my sugar. I have to have my sugar. And there is definitely a component to where people are addicted to sugar. We talked about, you know, sugar is as addictive as cocaine is, and so it can be hard to get off of. And so you have to replace it. That's one of the really interesting thing I learned recently is, you know, if I tell you not to think of the color red, you're all thinking of the color red, and so you have to replace that by thinking of the color blue potentially. So you can't just say, well, if you think about not eating sugar all day, all you thinking about is sugar. So you have to replace it with something else. So maybe it's water, maybe it's exercise. And I heard somebody was saying the thing they do as soon as they feel like they need that sweet thing, they drink 2 glasses of water. 2 glasses of water. Dave, I know you love this. You drink 2 glasses of water, and then you go and take a 5-minute walk. And if you come back and you feel like you absolutely need that, still need that hit of sugar, which most people find they don't anymore, they just needed it out of boredom, basically. But if you really absolutely need it, then eat half of what you were planning on eating. Now, obviously, you don't do that during the 21 sugar detox. Our goal is to eliminate sugar completely from that. But by doing this 21-day sugar detox, you're basically setting up your body to allow you to feel just as much from a little bit of sugar and real sugar, and get the same kind of satisfaction from a little bit versus you know, having to have it all the time. So eating sweeter vegetables, you know, it's amazing how once you haven't had any refined sugars, no processed sugars for 21 days, kale tastes different, broccoli tastes different, like foods that you normally think are bland and blah and gross. They have a lot of flavor when your taste buds have rejuvenated, which your taste buds rejuvenate every couple of weeks. And so you get a lot more flavor out of real food when you're not always consumed by the added sugars, the massive amounts of added sugars in all the processed foods that we're eating. So it becomes something where you can start to enjoy, you know, carrots as a sweeter food. Apples are a treat because they're really, really sweet when you don't eat any other added sweeteners. And then, like it says, use gentle sweets. So like once you're done with the 21-day sugar detox, honey at least has some added elements to it. There's antimicrobial, antibacterial properties to honey. There's some nutrients in honey. So if you're going to sweeten something, use some sugar or from honey versus just plain pure white sugar, which is extremely processed, and there's absolutely zero nutritional value from that. You can get coconut sugar. Stevia is kind of it's one of those where it's like, is it a real sugar? Is it an artificial sweetener? It does come from a plant, so it's a natural source of a sweetener. It has 0 calories. I still err on the side of don't use it too often. But if you have to have it in like a shake or something, you can even do little tiny drops of stevia. And monk fruit's kind of a new one nowadays that we're utilizing in some of our shakes and products that we sell here at the office. So once you are using, you know, go back to say using a little bit of sugar in your diet, try to focus on some of those types of sugars versus always just grabbing the plain white sugar. Get exercise. We talked about that. Stay active, you know, try, like I said, replace that hunger with something else. Do something else. You got to break the habit, interrupt your day-to-day routine. So just get on the floor and do a couple push-ups instead, and then drink a glass of water, or just find something different to replace that sugar craving. Getting rest and sleep is really, really important. You know, take care of your body in other ways. It's through relaxation. Take a Epsom salt bath, or start learning how to do prayer meditation. Maybe grab a book. Maybe there's a book you've been meaning to read for a long time. And guys, something I've learned is I often eat out of habit. Like I just feel like I need to eat because it's 6 o'clock at night. And that's not the way we should technically eat. We should eat when we're hungry, when our body needs fuel. And so I've learned, like, I can get a lot more done if I'm not always focused on eating. There are times where I want to go home and I'll spend 2 hours picking at food and munching and grabbing and going back and forth to the fridge. And it's like, if I just eat when I need to eat and be done, I can get more stuff done. I can focus my energy on other things. I could grab a book and do that, or I could do some exercises or stretching or different things like that. So try to replace the cravings by doing something else. Fat-free foods and low-fat foods are not something you want to, gear towards. There was obviously the huge period of time where everything was low fat or fat free. And I definitely think that's started to change. That trend has changed, but some people are still very, very scared of fat. And fat is something that's very satisfying. It gives you a lot of energy. It tastes really good. And as long as you're not over consuming it, fats are going to have a lot less negative impact on your health than the sugars are. So finding good, healthy fats, avocados, olive oils, nut butters, things like that can really, satisfy your craving, also give you some energy and not have necessarily the negative effects. Obviously experimenting with recipes and trying to boost the flavor, boost the different herbs and spices that you use to get lots of flavor out of the food that isn't all sugar. And then there are certain like supplements that you can take, or just normal foods like cinnamon is really, really good at regulating your blood sugar. So adding that to your foods on a regular basis is great too. So a detox is to reset, and that's what the 21-day detox is geared towards. A reset is adjusting, fixing in a new or different way. So you're learning how to approach eating differently. You're learning how to recognize foods that have way more sugar than you ever realized they did. You're changing, your taste buds, how you enjoy food, how you process and make food. You're changing the way your body is able to handle food. So in that video, it talked about most of our livers are so overloaded that it doesn't have time to do most of its work or most of its job. And so if you can eliminate all the sugar, which is what your body has to process, especially that fructose, which, high fructose corn syrup has even extra fructose, and there are certain foods with more or less fructose in them, but your liver has to deal with all of that, plus a million other things. So if you can just get rid of the sugar for a couple of weeks, you can really allow your liver to catch up and get back to a point where it's doing its entire job to the fullest. So our 21-day detox is based on developing a plan around eating better, moving better, and thinking better. So obviously a big component of it is the food component. You're completely eliminating sugar from your diet, but it also, again, helps if you're moving your body. Moving your body oftentimes curbs that sugar craving. And I notice for myself, like the more I'm exercising, the less I want to eat crappy, because why waste the exercise that you put in by then putting garbage back into my body? Because I know then I'm not going to heal as well. I'm not going to have the same benefits from that exercise. And then obviously thinking better, changing the way you think about food and life in general. There's like we talked about, getting more engaged in prayer, meditation time can make a huge impact on the way you see food and manage food as well. So this program, we started a year or two ago, I think. And so it's the plan is all laid out for you guys. There's the steps to success right there. So each week, there's basically a week. Week goes week by week. So you get week 1. It tells you exactly what things you're going to do for that week, how to be successful. It talks about how to prep, what things to do to prep. And then it literally gives you every single meal of the day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner. It walks you through all the groceries, it has all the recipes, how to cook the meals. So if you're somebody who just needs exact direction, you can follow this to a T and you can't go wrong, because everything is labeled out for you. It literally walks you through everything you're going to eat every single day. You can steer away from it a little bit as long as you maintain the proper ways of doing the stuff. So as long as you're avoiding all the sugars and all the artificial sweeteners and all that kind of stuff, you can change up the recipes a little bit. But if you're somebody who's like, just tell me exactly what I need to do, this tells you exactly what you need to do. We do a couple things for this detox. So we have an in-body machine. So we want to see some progress on this. We want to see how your body physically changes internally. So the in-body test gives you, what your fat percentage is at, where your muscle mass is at, how much visceral fat you have. Visceral fat is the fat you store around your internal organs, your stomach, pancreas, spleen, intestines. It's a very dangerous fat. That's the fat that basically makes your heart stop. And this machine tells you how high your number is. And basically sugar is the main component that raises that visceral fat. So we want to see that number lower when you're done with a 21-day sugar detox. So everybody who does the program does a beginning in-body and a post-in-body to see their progress. So that's just kind of a breakdown of some of the key numbers there. We're looking at obviously fat versus muscle mass. I don't necessarily care about people's weight. I care about how much of their weight is muscle mass versus fat mass. And then you can see in that middle picture where it says visceral fat, that person has a level 12. We need to see that under 10, at least under 10, ideally between 5 and 8. All right, so how this is going to work, it starts next Monday, and it includes the in-body scan. We do a before and after wellness score, so that just incorporates additional tests that we look at to see where people are at as far as their overall health goes. It includes the 21-day guide of all the shopping list recipes and daily goal. I was going through, just week 1 is like 17 pages worth of material, all the recipes, shopping lists, and how to cook them. And then it has like a daily challenge on every single day. So it's part of the mental component of it. You know, there's different challenges that we try to hold you accountable to doing. You get a weekly check-in with one of our nutrition coaches. So Christy and Dawn both do nutrition here at the office. So if you have questions, concerns, want to change things up, you get to meet with them one time each week out of the 3 weeks. You get 3 sessions with them. We're also going to put in 6 functional fitness sessions. So basically you're working out with our trainer twice each week. And so all of that stuff is for non-members, which basically means people who are not in the office at all, is $299. If you're a member at our office, it's $249. Some people are already paying to work out here, so then they get a little bit of a discount as well. Then they pay the $199. So that is that's the cost of the program here, and it's honestly, guys, it's like the cheapest thing. It's just crazy, like how easy, like just the recipes alone are probably worth the $299. And then the fitness center sessions, like it's a really, really great deal. It's part of it, guys, is it's just like once you put that money down, like it commits people, and they really, I don't know, most people tend to do better once they've made that commitment and they just go for it. And then they realize, hey, I need to do this. I need to commit to this and actually go forward with it. So I don't know who's all on here right now, but does anybody have any questions on all of that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So when we're looking at this, we don't feel we're necessarily down the sweet road. We watch our sugars. So we must get them some from other foods. So what would be those main foods? Bread? You know, where would we be getting our sugars?
Yeah, bread and pasta. Anytime bread and pasta is basically sugar. I mean, that's how your body breaks it down, and it breaks it down relatively quickly. So it basically turns into sugar fast. And even some of your wheat breads, like there's really not even that much difference. You might get a little more vitamins and minerals out of your wheat bread, but it still breaks down into sugar really, really quickly, into glucose. And then your liver has to process that. And the faster it gets broken down, the more insulin you release. So your body's always responding to how much sugar is getting broken down and how quickly. And then that equates to insulin production from your pancreas. And as that video kind of showed, the more insulin you have, that insulin tells your body to store fat. And then it's what leads to insulin resistance, which then leads to, you can't get rid of the sugars out of your bloodstream, which then leads to diabetes, basically.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff included on this, but what about the psychological impact of I could lose my marriage if I could stop eating sugar. I mean, are you going to pay for my divorce attorney, or what's going on here? I need sugar is what I'm saying. I mean, if I don't have some type of sugar in my system, I go psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it true that when you stop eating sugar, things happen? I'm sorry I came in late.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that a little bit, but like your body has to get to a point where it burns fat for fuel efficiently. And if you're always eating sugar as your fuel source, then your body's not very efficient at burning fat. And that can lead to problems. Your body is dependent on the sugar consumption to get that normal energy that you experience, which energy then just goes up and down with that sugar consumption. Whereas if you can burn fat for fuel, you stabilize your energy a lot more evenly. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, especially early on in the early stages of a sugar detox, it can be challenging.
I really like sugar. It's a tough one.
Most people do.
No, I mean, I love sugar. Love it. If I could marry it, I would. But anyway.
Linda, you're
Thanks.
scaring me. I thought I was the only one to come up with stuff, but this seems real to you.
Oh, Linda got on here. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
When did you get on, Linda?
Pardon?
At what point did you get on?
I don't know, like 15 minutes ago. It took a while.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulties for sure.
Can you repair your,
You're on mute.
your, no, I'm not.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
I'm in there. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh. Can you,
Give
you
that
really
man
can
sugar.
reduce, you can really reduce your A1C?
Yeah.
Permanently?
Well, yeah, if, as long as you keep doing what you're doing. If you go back to eating sugar, your A1C is going to go back up.
Well, that makes sense. Can diabetics become non-diabetic through this type of?
Correct. Type 2 diabetics, not type 1, but yes, type 2 diabetics can get their numbers back into a zone that is no longer classified as a diabetic.
Okay, and that's really going to be carb watching along with sugar.
Yeah,
Because
and Dave, those are the same. So any type of carbohydrate, and I think maybe that's a confusion for some people, is carbohydrates get broken down into sugar. So sugar is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are just kind of the broad classification, and then everything gets broken down into these smaller elements: glucose, fructose, galactose. Those are all smaller individual molecules of sugar. But a carbohydrate, sugar, it's the same thing. There are just more complex carbohydrates than basic glucose. That's like the bare minimum. Sucrose is what table sugar is. That's a glucose and a fructose together. And a piece of bread is just a whole bunch of these two molecules packaged together into a whole bunch of pieces. And your body just breaks it down into the individual pieces so that it can get into your bloodstream.
Hey, Linda.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, I like carbohydrates.
I love bread. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm probably shouldn't have come to this. I'm not a good advocate.
You need the bread anonymous.
You're putting sugar on your bread, aren't you? Cinnamon toast
Oh
crunch.
my gosh. Yes.
I grew up on that stuff. Truly, I did.
And look at you turned out. Well, mostly.
But the thing, like for me, it's still hard. Like I still crave sugar big time. I mean, I was home this weekend, right? So I was at my mom's house, and she always has a pan of bars at home, always available. And I literally, I'm like, I just thought, well, I'll just have one bite, right? And so I did. And then 10 minutes later, I had another bite, and 10 minutes later, I had another bite, and pretty soon I had half a pan of cookie bars eaten. And like, it's just because it's tough. It's an addiction, and I think we carry that with us for forever.
Diana wants to know if it's rice, potatoes, or pasta, which is the worst.
You scared her away. Oh,
Yeah,
there's
Diana,
Smashes
there, I
back.
got your question in there, Diana.
Question.
Don't say pasta. Don't say pasta. Don't say pasta.
That's because this is in the way.
The question: rice, potatoes, and pasta are the.
Now, if I'm gonna have one of those types of foods, what's the least bad, really?
Don't eat any of them.
I figured you'd say that.
Ah,
What's your sub? Grass from the yard?
No, my gosh.
You guys
Grass from the yard.
You guys.
grass clippings.
No, I'm
there's-
serious.
there's
We gotta have some kind of alternative that's.
Yeah.
Cauliflower rice.
Exactly. Cauliflower rice is what I use for my rice. I also use bonza rice, which is made from garbanzo beans.
Oh,
Amazing.
But
Really, really
wait,
good.
beans have carbs and beans have
They do.
sugar.
Yep. So they do have carbs. They're more complex though. And so it's a lot harder for your digestive system to break them down into the sugar. So again, guys, it goes back to how I could have touched more on like glycemic index and glycemic load. Those are important numbers to learn about. So
Yep.
like a glycemic index is how quickly is your blood sugar going to rise based on how quickly it can get broken down. So if I eat a tablespoon of just pure white sugar, right? That has a glycemic index of 100. That means it's really, really fast. It goes right into my bloodstream. My body doesn't have to do anything to it. It just shoots right into my bloodstream. And that's what's going to shoot that insulin levels really high. Whereas if I get carbohydrate from a bean or a piece of broccoli or a vegetable, my body has to work really hard to break up all those little molecules. And so it takes it a lot longer to get that sugar into my bloodstream. So my insulin net levels never spike. It secretes a little bit, just enough, but it never has to spike because my body doesn't want to have much sugar in the bloodstream at any given time. And so if pure table sugar is going to shoot right in there, I got to shoot a lot of pancreas insulin out to get rid of that as quickly as possible. So it really depends on the glycemic index, glycemic load. And I don't know exactly the numbers on, that's something I would look at for potatoes, pasta, and rice. White rice is going to have a really high glycemic index. White bread is going to have a really high glycemic index. Pasta is going to have a really high glycemic index. The beans are going to be lower. It's going to take longer for that to get into your bloodstream. Does that make sense?
So beans are on that lower level?
Yeah. And then you also look at like the nutrient content in there. So again, we talk about apples have a lot of fructose in them, and fructose can be a problem. And you don't, I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody go and eat 7 apples a day because that's going to just,
Oh, geez.
the liver's going to have.
Oh, jeez.
I had 2 apples today, Dr. Drew.
Fine. You'll live.
6 feet under.
I said 7. You're way below.
Well,
Slippery slope. Linda's on the slippery slope. She's going down fast.
the night's still young and I still have apples left.
So
you're eating the peel, right? You're getting fiber, you're getting nutrients, you're getting vitamins and minerals. So like white rice, basically no vitamins and minerals in white rice unless they add it to it, which they do that. Brown rice might have a little bit more in it, but not a lot. Pasta, if it's just whole wheat pasta that's been extremely processed, they'll add B vitamins and stuff. They have to add so many nutrients to it, but essentially there's no nutritional value to it. So it's pure sugar. Just going.
What was that?
Are you talking about the apple?
No, I'm going back to the rice pasta.
Rice pasta.
Cauliflower pasta is pretty good.
I've never had it, but I'd definitely try it. Linda loves cauliflower. Ask her.
Linda?
Yes. Yes, I love cauliflower. I think it's the best. I hate it.
Cauliflower will repair your marriage.
Yeah, right.
Oh man.
So
Dr.
do we?
Drew, I had a question.
Yeah.
If I know exercise, I mean, I do know I eat less calories than I burn calories just from the apps that I use on my phone, on my watch. Would that not matter the amount of sugar I would intake in any kind of form, whether it's pasta, rice, hamburger? I mean, I'm not sure about the calories, but I know I'm not eating as much as I'm burning, but I'm not quite sure of the exact numbers.
That's why exercise is really, it's a good component of a major part in this. So like somebody who's running, 5-10 miles a day, their muscle cells are going to be very depleted of glucose. And so when you eat that glucose, even if it's a table of sugar, as soon as it goes into your bloodstream, your muscles are going to be like, I need that right now because I'm empty. I got to have it. And it'll absorb it and it'll get it out of your bloodstream faster. So yeah, if you're somebody who's a high level elite athlete, those carbs are gonna, help refuel the muscles, and that's beneficial. And that's why exercise is important. But if you're not doing high levels of exercise, you don't need that. And I know plenty of people, I know people who have done marathons and triathlons without eating a single carbohydrate. But they've had to train for that. They have to get their body really good and efficient at burning fat for fuel.
All right, yeah, because I'm not an athlete, but I think I'm more active than most of my friends who don't spend time on exercising more than I do.
Yep, and you can probably see it.
Enjoy too.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions, everybody.
Yeah, I have a legitimate question. So going through the program, so we would learn more about this when we meet with Christy or Dawn, right? And we would learn more about how to, like, long term, because it's a strategic plan. This isn't a 21-day, I'm going to be better and life's going to be great. It's just a really good kickoff.
Exactly.
But we would learn the long-term strategic way to handle our intake going forward, right?
Yeah, part of that is, if you can get 21 days of good meals and recipes and learn, like a lot of these, you're going to learn like, oh, wow, I can use cauliflower rice in a meal, or I can make a pizza out of almond flour and cauliflower rice and different things like that. And so you're learning the ways that you can continue to make your recipes and foods down the road that don't necessarily have to be so heavily carbohydrate loaded and sugar loaded. And yeah, I mean, obviously you have to have questions. The more you participate, the more you're going to learn, the more benefits you're going to get out of it, because you're exactly right. If you're just doing this, honestly, just doing this to do it is still going to be beneficial. Even if you do 21 days and you go right back to however you were doing, at least you're giving your liver that break of 21 days so that it can clear itself out of
I think we're gonna do it together.
that have built up. But obviously the goal was to get a kickstart and then continue to keep the sugars at a lower rate from what you're consuming.
Is there a detox powder that we get included in this thing that's going to flush me out?
This does not include any of that, but yeah, you can certainly get some of that.
Like what?
Oh, they got a lot of flush me powders there. A lot of flush me's.
So if we want to sign up and commit, how do we go about doing that?
Do I know? A text. Oh, you guys all have our phone number here, right?
No. You guys usually call me.
That's when you're late.
That's because you're late.
That's right. That's right.
So whatever message, you've all gotten text messages for your appointments and stuff. You text that number, just say I'm in or whatever, and then Allie will send you all the information you need to get signed up.
And it starts Monday.
Yep, it's going to start Monday. So if you look at
again this week,
even this first page here, it talks about like clearing out all your foods, your pantry, get rid of all the temptation foods.
It's a big pantry.
I ain't doing that.
You can give it away, you can throw it away, you can donate it, whatever you want to do. Just you don't.
No, the bread will turn green on its own.
It will, yeah. And that's a good thing. You want foods that rot quickly.
All right.
Okay.
We'll let everybody have peace here. We'll get off this call. I'll see you Thursday and we'll talk about it.
It's a pleasure having you on tonight.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Hope we see you Monday.
Bye.
Linda, you look like you have a question.
I did, but now that those two are gone, I don't want to bother you guys anymore. I was just wondering what the before and after wellness score is.
You've done a wellness score before, right?
Is that where you guys like monitor like how many jumping jacks I can do, how many?
That's where we like run the scans. We do like your waist and hip. We do your blood pressure. We do your.
Oh, okay.
So you're a little bit of a unique one here, as far as like none of these prices necessarily apply to you because you're already a member with some things. So you get like the meetings and stuff. So really what you need is just the book.
Yeah. I'll see you guys tomorrow and I'll talk. When's the deadline?
We'll talk about it.
Don't say tonight at midnight. Don't say tonight at midnight.
You get whatever, however long this week you need.
All right. Cool.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Allie.
I'll see about this too, Dr. Drew, before Sunday now. It starts Monday, you say, right?
Yeah. So you got to let us know for sure by Friday.
By Friday. Okay. By Friday then.
Yep.
I will let you know.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. You guys have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for coming.
All right. Bye-bye.
You have to stop streaming and you have to stop recording.